Hello everybody, so today I'm going to go over how I set up this mode effect up for the environmental effects series. I'm going to go over how the textures are set up and how to put them in a particle system. Please let me know if you have any questions, comments, or you have any requests. Please leave them in the comments. Hope you enjoy. Alright then, let's get started. So for an effect like this, what I generally tend to do is to split them up into two different textures. So one texture, which is going to be 12 by 12, is a cluster texture. So what I mean by that is I'm going to have a texture that has a cluster of motes in just one place. So for example, you would have something like this. You would add it into a particle system, and then you would have that in the world. So to actually achieve something like this, what I like to do is to do a layering effect. So I would have 4 different layers at 4 different opacities, and then have them be in this texture. And then when I put it into the world, it looks like there is like a really large amount of particles, where in reality, there's only just this texture and there's a lot of depth to it. So let's say, for example, if you're trying to do a cluster, but you only have like something like this as the motes, that's not going to be feasible, because when you're actually trying to give the player the illusion of depth, this is not it, because it has just one gradient. What you're trying to do is, for example, like for layer 1, I would do 25% of the opacity, layer 2, 50% of the opacity, layer 3 is 75%, and layer 4 is going to be the 100%. So when you get to a point where you're trying to actually do the modes, you want to do them layer by layer. So for example, I'm going to start with the 25% and then just do something like this. And then I would move to the 50% layer and then just add a little bit here and there. Try not to like do something like this, because it's going to overshadow the background and you don't want that. Just want like some smaller, you just want some smaller clusters. So I went a bit too much here. If I go back, yeah, that should be fine. Then I'm going to move on to the 75%. Then the 100%. So as you can see, even though I did it in 4 layers, you can still see that there is a lot of depth in here. So if you see, for example, if I move, let's say just one of them like this, you can still see that the background, the midground and foreground, it has a lot of depth, and that's what I'm looking for. And one thing you can also do to give it that extra level of detail and level of complexity is to add a little bit of blur. So what I'm going to do is turn them all off except for one. Then go filter, blur, and Gaussian blur. So for this one, I'm going to start at 1. And then every layer you go up, like for example, 25 is 1. This is going to be 50, 25, and then maybe this one is 0 or 0.3. So let's say for this one is going to be, say 0.7, because I don't think you can do 75. And then for the next one would be blur. 2.5 for this, and then for the last one it would be blur, Gaussian blur, and 2. So that way you can see like you still have the depth, but now it's just an extra layer of complexity in it, because the background is a bit blur and it gets sharper in the front, and that's what you're looking for. think that's a little bit too sharp, so I'm gonna add just one more. Yeah, I think that should be fine. So yeah, that's it for this texture. And I would just save as a copy and go to TGA and call this motes. So for the next texture is just going to be, oh, actually, sorry, I didn't merge them. That's what I needed to do, just in case. Okay, so for the next texture, I'm basically gonna do just one mote, one singular mote. So yeah, for this one, you really don't need to go to a higher resolution. You can actually go down to 128 or 256. I'm gonna go to 128 because that's just gonna be easier for me to deal with. I'm gonna also add a new layer, change this into a darker background. And you're just gonna grab a brush, just a normal one. Oh, right. Also, for the other one, I used the splatter brush, just FYI. For this one, I'm gonna go into the softer brushes and just think this is fine, honestly. Yeah, that's good to go. I'm gonna also save this as a copy and target, and instead of motes, I'm just gonna call it mote. But yeah, that's it for the textures. So in Unreal, I'm gonna actually import them to the textures, just making sure it actually looks good. Perfect. I think you can see it here more than in Photoshop, but as you can see, like the front is a bit sharper, the background is a bit blurry, and this is what you're looking for when you're looking at depth. Actually, you can even reuse this for like dust. No, not dust, sorry. Grit and, for example, sand and other things. So it's not just like for motes. Just a small tip. But yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna go to materials, make a new one, call this _motes. Okay, so for this, okay, so I'm gonna start with the behavior and then gradually go to the texture itself. So what you would expect from something like this is when you get closer to it to slowly start to fade away. And then when you back out, it slowly gets into perspective. So to do something like that, you would want a pixel depth with a sphere mask. So what the sphere mask does is basically just gives you a radius of a sphere, but what I'm using the pixel depth for is how far it is, how far the texture is going to be, or like the origin point of the actual effect. So let's say, for example, I'm just going to do a constant of 20. I think it's better to show. So I'm going to do 20. So for example, the further I get away from this, the more it's going to disappear. So if I increase, or actually decrease this, and let's say, okay, so the further away I get, the more it's going to fade. So now, if I wanted to have this as a effect where the closer I get, the more it fade, I'm just going to have a y-, which is going to invert this result. So if I look at it, the closer I get to it, the more it starts to fade. That's the type of effect that I'm looking for. So now that I have what I want, I'm going to do a texture. Call this motes. And I'm going to do particle color because I want to control the alpha in this. I'm gonna do a multiply, another multiply. To get the shortcut for the multiply is hold M and left click. Okay, so I'm just gonna use green channel for this. Okay, next I'm gonna add a depth. Fade. So if this texture or the particle interacts with any object, this is going to give it that fade line. So it doesn't have like a harsher line when it interacts with anything. So next, I'm just going to multiply it here. If I take a look at it, actually, let's change this as translucent, unlit. Not sure if you can see it, but it's right here. So if I just kill this, here you would have your motes, and as soon as I add this, because I'm closer to it, they're going to disappear. And the more I back out, the more they appear. And that's what I'm looking for in this. Okay. Next, I'm going to convert this to a texture parameter. I'll just call it texture. So after saving this, I'm just going to make a material instance and add the other texture in here, because I don't need to do two materials that does exactly the same thing. So I'm just going to do create material instance and just change this here into this one. And I think you can see it more with this than the other one. But yeah, that's kind of the effect that I'm looking for. Okay. So now that I don't need this, I am going to go to the particle system and create a Niagara system, an empty one, and call this an S underscore motes. So I'm just going to actually add it in the world just so I can also see it. All right, so for this one, I'm going to the material motes and do a burst. Let's say 5. See if it's in here. Yep. Okay, I'm just going to increase the size so I can actually see it. Uniform. As you can see, it's right here. So now, as you can see, the closer I get to it, the more it fades. Okay. All right, so now a couple of things. I want this to be basically playing forever. So I'm gonna uncheck this box, and this is gonna live basically forever. Go to self, infinite, go once, and then infinite. That way, no matter how many times this like resets, it wouldn't matter. It will just always be the same. So couple of things. You can leave it this way and you can just add it to your world. That's fine. Personally, I just like to add a couple of things to it just to give it that more of a depth and complexity. So let's see. For the burst, I'm gonna do, actually 5 is fine. And I'm gonna add a shape. Location. So now you have more, oh. Not sure it worked. I think it did actually. It's fine. I'm just gonna do this. Rotation sprite random. So now every time or whenever it spawns randomly. So you don't have to worry about that. Yep. As you can see, like there's this bit of depth in there. So that's what I'm looking for. Okay. Next, I am gonna add a little bit of curl noise. Fix issue. Oh, wrong place. Need to put it on the particle update. Okay, I don't want it to basically go infinitely because this is a particle with infinite life. So I don't want it to just go off into the distance. So I'm gonna add a drag and set it to like maybe 2. I think that looks all right. But yeah, this is how you set up the first kind of effect. And for the other one, let me see. Also, if you wanted to change anything with the if you wanted to change the alpha or anything, you can set it up here, or you can set it up in a color. Here, we could set up a color and just change it over here. It's up to you. Usually at this point, it's just an artistic choice. So yeah, let me delete this one. So I'm just gonna uncheck this, add an emitter and another empty one. I'm just gonna do another mote. And for this one, let's see, also burst, C20. And for the system, it's also going to be a infinite. So you set it to once and infinite. Then here you just uncheck this one and it will live infinitely. Let's see, next I'm going to do the same with the other one and add a shape to break up the actual shape of it. Add a random rotation and add a random, no, not a random, sorry, a uniform. Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah. Random uniform. So that way you would have different sizes, and that's what I want, for example. For this one, let's do 2 by 5. Okay, that's not bad. And also I'm gonna add a little bit of curl noise to this. I'm just going to increase the size because I can't see them anymore. Okay, also for this one, I'm going to add a drag. Set it up to 3. Okay, I'm gonna add a bit more to this because I kind of want it to be a large surface area. Okay. Let me just see. Okay. All right, I think it should be fine this way, so I'm just gonna put it back to that same size. Also, the difference between this one and the other one and why I set it up the way I did. For example, this has 20 particles spawning. This has only 5. And I can even put it back to like 2 or 1. And it still looks more full than these particles. And that's why I would do something like this, for example. So if I turn this back on, and I go back a little bit. Oh, right, I killed the alpha on them. See, this effect looks more full and it has the movement, it has everything that it needs. The other effect, unfortunately, looks it looks nice, don't get me wrong. But if you wanted something as, with more complexity and depth for like an indoor scene or like a cinematic cut or whatever it is, this would work better. If you wanted something that is like simple, it's in the game, you're just going to pass it once and that's it. It's not going to be on camera or everything. You just set it up, set it like, for example, to 50, and you should be fine and good to go. As long as it doesn't affect performance. That's the one rule.